Hello again. Welcome to the first Eurosite remote sensing webinar. I'm Wojtek Mróz from Eurosite, and I will host this webinar on behalf of our network. I've got a great pleasure to announce that today we might expect here up to 400 participants from 71 countries and 6 continents, according to the list of attendees. I would like to encourage you to introduce yourself by writing your full name, affiliation, and country in Q&A button just below your question. So just to note to our panelists who ask the question. And generally, we are not using chat box. We are focusing on Q&A button. So please paste all of your questions. Using this function, Q&A, during whole webinar, you can write questions related to the presentation and other issues connected with drones and their use in site management. These questions will be answered by our panelists online during the webinar. Some of them will be answered more broadly in the Q&A session after the webinar, and others after the meeting. The report will be distributed afterwards to all participants. I would like to tell you that I'm a botanist and ecologist, and for many years of my field research, I just dreamed about such remote sensing methods that are so easily available today. And now I feel that having all of this at our disposal, we are not making full use of it. The idea behind this series of webinars is to fill this gap. We want to improve cooperation between remote sensing experts, practitioners, and site managers. We want to show that remote sensing methods can be inexpensive, relatively easy to use, and above all, allow us to obtain accurate current data of great importance for biodiversity conservation. At the beginning, I would like to ask my colleague from Eurosite Secretariat to tell us a few words about our organization. Christian Civic speaks directly from Tilburg in the Netherlands.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christian Civic. I'm a Network Development Manager at Eurosite. Can you hear me? I would like to tell you something about, briefly about Eurosite, because I can imagine not all of you are familiar with Eurosite. So what is Eurosite? We are a European network of land conservation practitioners. So what does this mean? As a network, our mission is to provide opportunities to our members, practitioners, to network and exchange experience on practical site management. And Eurosite has been operating since 1989, which means that we are 31 years old. How do we do the networking? Well, we help our members, the practitioners, to share their experience and knowledge, to contact with each other and share their influence. And in return for their active networking, they gain support in their continual professional development. We do this by providing guidance, convening meetings, organizing workshops and trainings. We facilitate thematic working groups, help bring together project partnerships. We disseminate information, and also we represent our members at the European level, and we do advocacy for their needs and issues. and raise awareness about their problems, in addition to trying to help them solve them. We are a unique organization because we work both with governmental and non-governmental organizations across broad range of topics and geographic levels. We have members from all over Europe, but recently we are more and more working also more broadly. We have a very good connection with International Land Conservation Network. So this also improves our outreach and access to knowledge. Everything we do it focusing on practical aspects of day-to-day site management and land conservation. Also, everything we do is, as I said, is for the needs of our members. So our work is directly steered and guided by the needs of our members. And in general, a simple rule is the more as a member you're involved, the more benefits you get from your membership. Just briefly, some of the topics we tackle at the moment, which came out of the needs of our members, are ecosystem services and how these topics are tackled within the working groups we operate. So we look at ecosystem services and how site managers can use this concept to improve their work and to help them. We look at the wetlands and their function as natural climate buffers for climate change adaptation. As a network of practitioners, we have a lot of knowledge about practical site management. So through this management planning expert group on management, we try to provide the most up-to-date and useful guidance on how to develop good management plans that will help you manage your sites in the best possible way. We are here learning about remote sensing, especially in monitoring of your sites, because monitoring is one of the topics we are very strongly involved in for a number of years now. And also we are focusing on peatland restoration and management, because peatland are very crucial habitats for carbon storage in the light of climate change. And also, just one more thing I would like to say, that we should not forget, the network is first of all network of people, and Eurosite is a network of very kind and passionate people full of knowledge who are eager to learn from colleagues from all over Europe and the world, and also very eager to share their knowledge. And that is the spirit of Eurosite. And this is a photo from our 30th anniversary annual meeting last year in Italy, hosted kindly by WWF Oasi. And as you can see, this photo has been taken by a drone. So drones are already becoming an integral part of our everyday lives. So, and soon we'll hear more about it. I will not go into any more details now, but if you want to know more about Eurosite, feel free to check out our website or contact us through the email. Thank you very much and enjoy our webinar.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I hope that now we have a very good overview of our mission and activities. If you'd like to join our network, you know how to find us. Our today's webinar was prepared by one of Eurosite working groups, Remote Sensing Support Group. Now I would like to invite here the chairman of this team, my great colleague and excellent ecologist, Clive Hurford, speaking straight from Wales.
Hello. As Wojtek said, I will be chairing the webinar from here on in. Initially, I would just like to say a few words about how the Remote Sensing Working Group came into being, and then this will be just a short introduction, and then I will hand over to Lucie Kupková, who will be giving the presentation. So just a few minutes. So as Christian mentioned, there's been a strong link to monitoring with Eurosite since 2013. Since that time, we have held 4 Eurosite monitoring workshops, one in Wales, one in Catalonia, in the Czech Republic and in Spain. And recent was last year at Sanlúcar de Barrameda, near Sevilla in Spain. And this was held in conjunction with Doñana Biological Station. The main focus of that workshop was the roles of remote sensing and other new technologies in nature conservation. And one of the recommendations coming out from the workshop was that we should form a practitioner support group for nature conservation practitioners. This is where we are now, really. As a consequence of that feedback, we started to form the group, and this group now comprises remote sensing technicians and ecologists from about 20 European countries. The general idea, what we would have liked to do this year, is actually start a series of face-to-face meetings. So we would be setting up regional or national hubs sort of for information exchange between remote sensing technologists and nature conservation practitioners, and that we would be looking to hold 2 or 3 face-to-face meetings every year. And we were hoping to get that started this year, but then COVID-19 came along, and now we are at a webinar. But still, that is where we are, and this is the first of the webinars, and it is the first of 3, so there's a second one in 2 weeks' time, and the details of that one will be on the Eurosite website. Okay, you see, as I said, the main aim of the group is primarily to provide support for nature practitioners. So most of the questions that we will pick up today will have that focus. But the idea is that we will probably not have so long for questions at the end, but we will try to pick up any questions that we don't answer today in either by email or through the Eurosite website. A final point in relating to into the Q&A, if you can make sure you put your name as well as your question as you type the Q&A. What will happen is the panelists who will be answering the questions later will select questions as they are put in that we will deal with during the workshop. Okay, so I mean, you can do that in the background all the way through this. So please feel free to answer those questions. So at this point, I will hand over to Lucie for her presentation. Her name is Dr. Lucie Kupková, and she is head of the Department of Applied Geoinformatics and Cartography at Charles University in Prague, and she is currently involved in a project with Krkonoší National Park, a remote project using drones to map the tundra habitat there. So at this point, I'll just hand over to Lucie.
Thank you, Clive. Good morning to everybody. And I would like to ask you once again, please write your questions to Q&A box, not just your names, but your questions. Okay, so I am ready to start. I will share my screen for you. I hope you can see and see the presentation and hear me. I really hope so. So, welcome again, and I would like to talk about the potential of the drones for vegetation monitoring, mainly on the example of tundra in the Krkonoše Mountains. But I would also like to mention some more general practical information. So, about the project, what is important? We have a project focused on the development of methods using data from drones from multispectral data, hyperspectral and LiDAR acquired from drones. And there are several teams that joined for this work. It is mainly administration of the Krkonoše National Park, Stanislav Březina and Závoj Hrázký, botanists, Jan Pačák and Přemysl Janata. These are GIS people. Then there are people from Charles University, me, Markéta Potůčková, Lucie Červená, Jakub Lisák, he is our pilot, Markéta Roubalová. We are mainly focused on hyperspectral remote sensing. We have also important colleagues from Institute of Botany of Czech Academy of Science, Jana Millerová and Tereza Klinerová. And what is important, our advisor, project advisor is Clive Hurford, because he works for Krkonoše. He visited us several times, so we are in close touch, and it is really very important to collaborate with together all these people, because only then we can get good, sharp and accurate result for our goals. So starting points why we selected tundra, because it's a really valuable phenomenon and it's at the same time sensitive. So there are some management problems, like some expansion of shrubs and grasses into vegetation like Nardus stricta, these expansive grasses like Calamagrostis villosa and Molinia caruela, and also dwarf pine expansion. So it's really important to monitor all these changes, also because we need to know, of course, what type of management is better to sustain the high biodiversity of tundra. So we supposed, and it's now clear that Earth observation has really good potential for vegetation monitoring, because it's of its objectiveness, repeatability, data from really extensive area, rather extensive area. It's possible to acquire them in one moment and also for several times during season, and it is very important for the monitoring. So what are our goals? It's to evaluate and compare potential of different types of remote sensing data, as I mentioned. We also want to test accuracy of different classification methods. We would like to know if, for example, some methods that are available in free software packages are really accurate for monitoring. We are going to monitor changes for over 5 years, and then we would like to know what is change and what is error, because it's not clear now what is the accuracy of monitoring. And finally, we would like to propose the methodology and to implement it in the national park. Our study area is Eastern Tundra. Tundra belongs to Krkonoše Mountains, and the eastern part has about 16 kilometers square of area. It's Arctic alpine tundra. You can see that it's really rich in vegetation species and habitats. There are many endemic glacier relicts and rare species, and also very unique habitats. What is important, just to say several words about human impact, because it goes to the 16th century, and there were really extensive management practices like grazing and high management, especially in the second half of the 19th century, dwarf pine plantings and also clear cuts. And in 1963, it was there was established national park, and tundra was designed as a zone without human impact interference. And there is questions what is better for the biodiversity, if some management practices of or if to be here without human interference. That is because we really deal with biodiversity monitoring. So here you can see our small research plots within the Eastern Tundra. We have Bílá louka meadow, the second one is Luční hora mountain, Úpské rašeliniště bog, and Úpská jáma kori. You can see pictures. And here you can see that these sites, these plots are really very different as for vegetation that is occurred, that is on these sites. So Bílá louka meadow is dominated by Nardus stricta, and there are several other grasses. Luční hora mountain is a fine grain of mosaic of different vegetation, and there is also baldusky and rather rich vegetation and habitats. Even more rich is Úpské rašeliniště bog. You can find many types of vegetation here, and also lakes, dwarf pine, and so on. And the most rich is Kar Úpské jámy kori. That is really very valuable part of the Krkonoše mountain. So you can all hear them here on this picture. For those who are interested, there are more detailed information. You will have them in the presentation. I am not going to read it now. And what is the research setup? As I said, we have 4 research plots. They are 100 by 100 meters in their extent, and we acquire data from drones 4 times in the season, June, July, August, September, 3 types of data. We have very small pixel size, 3 centimeters, and several spectral resolutions. We have multispectral data and hyperspectral data, and as I said, we will monitor for 4 years. I am not going to speak about LiDAR data, mainly about multispectral data today. Which instruments we use? We use drones DJI Metris 600 Pro. We have in National Park, they have the same drone like we have at our university. In National Park, they use RGB camera and multispectral scanner, Micasense Red Edge. We have a hyperspectral camera that enables also vegetation health evaluation, but I am not going again to talk about it. And we have also LiDAR. You can compare prices of different technologies, and then you will see that multispectral technology is really the most accessible one, so I will concentrate on it in this presentation. What are the used methods? First, data acquisition methods. Our colleagues from Krkonoše National Park acquire data for multispectral data. They use both cameras on one drone, and they fly in a height about 50 meters. They really need these calibration panels. They need them for calibration and geocorrection. I am not going to details. You will again have them in the presentation. Just to mention that they work in Agisoft Metashape software. You have again price here, and it's used for radiometric calibration and also for geometric correction. What is very important, it's a field collection of botanical data. We have our colleagues from Botanical Institute who collect the data in the same dates as the data from drones or in the same weeks. And we would like to have really accurate data because it's the most essential point of the whole methodology. We were not exactly satisfied, so we will looking for better methods using GPS with queue for the next years. But what is important, we have 3 outputs from botanical mapping. We have classification legend, we have training and validation polygons, and we have vegetation map for each area, for each study site. Here you can see one example of vegetation map for Bílá Louka meadow. On this slide, we have 2 legends. We use more general legend, but for classifications, we use really this very detailed legend that has 50 categories. What about methods for classification? We resampled data, all data, hyperspectral and multispectral, on pixel size 9 centimeters. It is still very good for reaching good accuracy of classifications. And we also resampled hyperspectral data to 54 bands, because we need to reduce dimensionality of the data. We use the detailed legend. You can see here that for each study area, we use different legend because they are differently reached for vegetation species and habitats. We use pixel-based method and object-based classifications in mostly commercial software, but I will also mention that the methods that are incorporated in free software work rather good, so you are not dependent on commercial software. We classify images from each date for each area, but what is very important, we also create so-called multi-temporal composites. We merge all classified data from multispectral cameras and from hyperspectral cameras from all dates for all 4 months to one composite. Finally, we have 184 classification outputs for the first year. What is very important, it's accuracy assessment. We evaluate accuracy based on field data, and we have random sampling points stratified according to summarized area of training and validation data. We have 3,393 points for each mosaic, minimal number of points 50 for one category. And we use standard methods for classification accuracy assessment. Overall accuracy, this is share of correctly classified pixels on the total number of pixels, and also we evaluate accuracy for individual categories. It's very important. So we are now in the section of the first results. I wanted to stress that it's very important to acquire data during the season, because when you compare our species that are really under our main interests, Nardus stricta, and these 2 expansive species, you can see that in June there is not possible to distinguish many species. So when we continue, you can compare also on the photographs how it corresponds with images from drone. Multispectral images, it's RGB MS, it's from both cameras, from RGB camera and from MicaSense multispectral sensor together. And you can see that in July we can find a lot of new information in the image. And finally, in August, we have again some new information. It's really seasonal changes of phenology acquired inside this data. And here is the charm of remote sensing, because its main main advantage is that remote sensing can acquire information that is not possible to see by human eye, and then you can use the wavelengths that the human eyes is not possible to see, but remote sensing has bands in the data for it. And when you create so-called false color composite, at least you have even force species here that you can see even by human eye based on remote sensing data. So it's the charm of remote sensing. Now I'm going to show you classification outputs of for our areas of interest. This is for Bílá louka meadow, Luční hora mountain, Úpské rašeliniště bok, and you can see that there are really different categories in each area because we have one legend with the same colors for each image. So this is just to have an overview that the plots are really different. Here is also a result for Úpské jámy quarry. And when we continue with some quantification of results, we can compare accuracy of these multispectral data, joint RGB and multispectral camera and hyperspectral data. So in the first two columns, you can see first column is always for multispectral data. The second one of the same color is for hyperspectral. The first one is for Bílá louka meadow, second one is for Luční hora mountains, and the third is for bok. And you can see this, the best results were reached for Bílá louka and for hyperspectral data, but there are also some results better for multispectral data, like here. And we can conclude then that in average, results for hyperspectral and multispectral data are rather comparable. What is other question, which term can provide the best results? We are working now for this RGB MS data, and you can see that June is very bad. July is rather good, but what is the most important, that multi-temporal composite I was talking about gives us really significantly better results. So when we have data from several months of the season, we can join them and we can get much better results, like for overall accuracy, then also for individual categories. And there is comparison of RGB camera and MSS camera, and together RGB with MSS. You can see that RGB data are significantly worse in overall accuracy, and MSS and RGB MSS are comparable. In general, results for Bílá louka, that's here. These are all results for Bílá louka for different classification methods during the season and for different types of sensors. So for example, multispectral data RGB, MSS, RGB MS for Bílá louka, then for Luční hora, then this is maximum likelihood classification. You can compare it with SVM classification and with random forest and object-based classification. What is important, that the best results for all methods was reached for Bílá louka, and as you can see, the worst results for Úpské hory. It seems that higher number of diversity gives worse classification result, but we will work with it still. And what we can say, maximum likelihood is again a relatively good method. This is maybe the most important output of our first year. This is a classification of multitemporal composite for RGBMS data for Bílá Louka meadow. We used maximum likelihood classifier, and you can see that we classified almost on the level of individual species. These are grasses on Bílá Louka meadow, and we reached really high overall accuracy. And if you can see, for several categories, it means for several species, we got very, very good classification accuracies. And here you can also compare the same categories and different methods of classification, because this is also important for the future to find the best method for each category. And again, very good results for maximum likelihood classifier. So I would like to also think a bit about drones' advantages and limitations, because it's in general very important for the practice. And I would say that the biggest limitation is perhaps dependence on weather, on wind also, but it's the same also for example, data from satellites and for botanists. So we cannot do anything about it. And we have also a short flight time for our drones, about 20 minutes. It's also limitation, but you can use in your practice some different drones, for example, Wingtra drone, and you can have even 1 hour flight time possibility, but it's more expensive. As for the advantages, it's really maximal operable, and you can really acquire data anytime. In the case of good weather, you can get extremely good time resolution, spatial and spectral resolution, dependent on your cameras, and combine different types of sensors. And what is also interesting, you can zoom in, zoom out in different landscape scales, and you can also evaluate landscape structure. And of course, this is a charm of a new technology that you can experience. So I am going to conclusions. We have, of course, to improve our results from the first year. We have collected botanical data with better accuracy, improve mosaics, especially for hyperspectral data, improve some methods of classification, and of course, to decide if to discharge some categories with bad accuracy results. What is important, we really realize that close collaboration of remote sensing people with botanists is very important. We have meetings in the field and in Skype and online technologies really on a weekly basis, and we discuss everything, and we hope to have good results finally in our 4th and 5th year of the methodology development. The advantages of drone are clear. They can fly on low altitude and they are very operable, so you can have multi-seasonal data. It is very important to distinguish between change and between classification inaccuracy or error. And really good news is that multispectral data that is more accessible technology than hyperspectral data can give you relatively comparable results like hyperspectral data, and you can have them with lower price, easier acquisition, pre-processing and processing. Future work, we would like to improve accuracy of classifications, better positional accuracy of training data. We would like also to distinguish what is really change, what classifications methods are good for particular categories. We would like to quantify area of individual categories and also area covered by some categories in different classification methods. We would like to compare this area. Of course, we want to bring practical outputs, finally method of vegetation monitoring for a national park and implement this method. And I would like to stress that our colleagues from National Park Krkonoše are really advanced already now. They had some very good experiences with data acquisition already before the project started, and they are improving in methods, and we are improving in communications and looking for the common way how to get the best results. And finally, the take-home message for all of you. Close collaboration and communication of the whole team of remote sensing specialists is really essential. You perhaps know this. Remote sensing specialists can be members of the team of conservation practitioners, and that is very good solution. Drone technology enables high accuracy in detailed vegetation mapping, even at the species level, of course, for some types of habitats. And I would say it is a good time to use drone now because it's really accessible technology. As for the price, manipulation, data acquisition, pre-processing, analysis, and mainly because it can give really good results for the monitoring of changes. It's operable. You can go to the field several times during the season. The whole area you have in the same times. It's objective because it's based on the physics, not on individual evaluation of some botanist. It's repeatable. So these are the advantages, but we have to say that if you are aware also of limitations, and of course, if you know advantages of the technology, it can really improve the way that you monitor vegetation, biodiversity, also spatial distribution and change of vegetation, and using hyperspectral area camera, you can even evaluate health of vegetation. We have another project where we deal with vegetation health. So these are very good news for nature conservation. And I would conclude that you should be sure that our Eurosite remote sensing support group is here for you to help and to support you if you had any questions, any difficulties. So don't hesitate to ask us. We would like to help. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention. And now I think there will be short video from the Krkonoše National Park, from drone, of course. And this is, authors are from the National Park, and you can see steep slope of the Korí, of Karúpské Jámy Korí. There is really species rich and habitat rich vegetation, and you could also see the highest mountain right now. It's called Sněžka, Snow Mountain. It has 1,602 meters high, and this is just an example that drones can really give a good image of the area. Thank you for your attention once again, and we will continue with questions and answer section, and I ask Wojtek to continue. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lucie, for this very interesting presentation. seeing all of these pictures, I would like to go there as soon as possible. It's really quite near from here, but the borders are still closed, so it is still not safe to travel, but we'll sure meet there again in better times. But now we can talk about it in our Q&A session. Reminder, just please use your Q&A button down on your right side to write down and follow the answers. And our chairman, Clive, is now preparing the set of the most interesting and relevant questions that Lucie and our panelists will, you will meet them soon, will answer in Q&A session. In the meantime, I would like to introduce our next panelist, also member of Remote Sensing Support Group, Ricardo Diaz Delgado from Doñana Biological Station in Spain. I have to say that I have great memories from last Eurosite monitoring workshop co-organized by you in Sanlúcar de Barrameda in Andalusia. I still feel that smell of fresh spring oranges. But never mind, back to work. There is still a few weeks to our holidays. So Ricardo, tell us a few words about your work. And I've heard also that you have some exciting news for us.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, this is Ricardo Diaz Delgado speaking from Sevilla, Spain, southern Spain. Thank you very much, Wouter, and thanks to all participants. We are really happy to have you all here enjoying this fantastic work. I just want to introduce myself very briefly. I'm currently responsible for what we call the Remote Sensing and GIS Lab at the Doñana Biological Station, which is a research center belonging to the National Research Council in Spain, which is seated in southern Spain, Sevilla. And we deal a lot with the Doñana protected area, especially for long-term monitoring. So I'm also leading this long-term monitoring at landscape scale using different remote sensing techniques, including obviously drones, such as the example by Lucie, so mapping vegetation too. And yes, indeed, I'm really very excited to share with you one fantastic news that we had just 2 days ago, by which we applied for a European Natura 2000 award that has yearly editions. And for this year edition, the 2020, with this application, we, under the framework of the Remote Sensing Support Group, we were successful and we were selected as finalists. So it's really a pleasure and make us feel very, very happy to share with you this information that we have become selected as finalists. And in order to increase visibility of this interesting and successful event, we need your vote to become finally the awarded application. So if you want to support the activities that the remote sensing carry out usually and focusing on the practitioners and the managers of the protected areas, we would be very, very happy if you can support us. To do so, you have to enter the web link that I will give you through the chat right now, and then just click it on it, and by introducing your valid email address. That would be lovely for us. Our application is based on our efforts over the last years mainly to transfer knowledge on the use of remote sensing in the conservation and monitoring of Natura 2000 protected areas. We have obviously done this by contributing to the implementation of this Eurosite remote sensing support group, and we had the chance to publish an edition of one book that intends to provide helpful examples on how to deal for practitioners with the use of remote sensing in the day-to-day management populated areas. The title of this book is The Roles of Remote Sensing in Nature Conservation, and it was published by Springer, so we are really happy if you can have a look. But we are very grateful to Eurosite for supporting us all the time. And as I said, as finalists, we can be eligible for this European Natura 2000 Citizens Award. So I just want to remind you all that you have a look on the chat. I will write down now what you have to do in the case you agree to give us this vote. We look forward for this, and then take the chance maybe to reply one of the questions that were raised during the webinar. For instance, there was one question that my colleague Andre already replied by Gofaone Romatokoara. I hope I pronounce it properly, this name, about how high can the drone fly. It is able to cover vegetation types that are long of about 10 meters, and how possible to measure or map an encroached area using them. Well, my colleague Andre already provided a nice reply. As you know, the height of the flights is dependent on the regulation, the country regulation. In the EU, we have a very strict regulation for this that is now shared by all the countries that allow us to fly not higher than 120 meters. But maybe in other countries around the world, still there is not yet a strict regulation to do so, so you can fly over this height. And yes, indeed, you can use drones with, for instance, for LiDAR, or without the LiDAR, you can use the point clouds that are generated by using any camera, any sensor to retrieve the canopy information, the height, and even the volume. But it's much better, of course, and always recommended to have the LiDAR. In any case, there were other questions in relation to that. Again, the selection of the proper equipment, of the best drone and on the best cameras, is always depending on, obviously, the available funding that you have. But I might say, and with this I want to stop my intervention now, but I might say that it largely depends on the available funds and the extent of the area you want to map, and many other points that we can share with you by typing in the QA session. So thank you very much. Have a look. I remind you all, have a look at the chat. I will write down now the link. Okay, already Kristen has provided the link, but I will write down. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ricardo. Can I ask Lucia if she has any questions that she can pick up about her presentation now, please?
Yes, Clive, I've selected two questions. The first one is related to accuracy assessment. If we use the data from the drone, no, we use data from botanical mapping. We collected, or our colleagues botanists collected about 800 samples in the field, and we used 1/3 for training of the classification and 2/3 for the validation. And we generated points within these polygons. We generated more than 3,000 points for each mosaic, for each classification output, and we evaluated results really based on field data. We also consider to have some random points generated on the classifications, and to take them in the field in the next year, and to evaluate accuracy also this way. And I have another question. There was a question if we can classify our data also using some free software. It's a very good question, because I wanted also conclude that as you could see during the presentation, maximum likelihood classification gave really good results, and this classifier is in some free available softwares like QGIS, like GRASS, and it's really good news that this relatively ordinary and often used method can be considered as a good one, and this is the answer that yes, we of course can classify in free softwares. So Clive, perhaps it's enough for now, and I suppose we will give some written answers on Eurosite webpage on other questions.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Lucia. We will answer one more question, so I will pass over to Andre Gross-Stoltenberg to pick up a question now, please. And I think then we will have to close because we are just about coming to 11 o'clock now. So. Okay, Andre.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Andre Groß-Stoltenberg. I'm from Gießen University, from Germany, and I'm working here in the landscape ecology, landscape planning working group, and I apply mainly remote sensing for ecological studies. I work with drones, satellites, aircraft, and different kinds of sensors, such as multispectral and LiDAR sensors. But there was one question. So one of my main topics is mapping occurrence and impact of invasive species. And there was one question about invasive knotweed invasion in the Netherlands. And I think, yes, it is possible basically to map invasive species. It always depends on the case. So if the species is quite different from the spectral reflectance, so how it appears visibly from other species, for example, if it's flowering very early in the year, in a very bright color, in very yellow color, and there's nothing else flowering, so it's very likely you can map it. So this was one question, and I'm working also in traditional orchards, so in like woody kind of ecosystems. And there was one or two questions about forests. So yes, basically it is possible to use drones in forests, but based on the current regulations, you always have to see your drone. You have to fly inside. There are very few exceptions, so that limits basically your application in forests, because if you cannot see it, you're not allowed basically to fly the drone. And yeah, regarding tools, I can only support my colleagues, Lucie and Ricardo, that there are lots of possibilities to use open source software. If you can't afford like commercial software, you can use QGIS. I think they will be very nice soon on it. You can use script-based software like R or Python, and yeah, then you can handle any kind of data, and yeah, also apply machine learning algorithms or deep learning to classify your data.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Okay, so now I will hand back to Wojciech, who will close the webinar. Okay, thanks again, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Clive, for your help, and thanks to all our panelists, and above all to all of you for spending with us this hour. And I feel, and I'm sure that this Q&A session was too short, but you can still, we'll send you the link with recording, and also report from questions that were not answered below during our meeting. And also, still, you can send some more questions later on to our Eurosite email. So, thanks a lot, all of you. We are meeting here quite soon, because in 2 weeks, and our next speaker will be Marina Škunca from Croatia. And so remember, join us again, and don't be afraid that some questions were not answered. We will send you the report later on. Thanks a lot for you for being here with us, and see you back in 2 weeks exactly at 11. Thanks a lot.